A young woman, desperate for both a job and a place to live, agrees to a very unusual deal: seduce a married man and destroy his marriage in exchange for several months of free rent. Hey everyone, welcome to Film Decoded. Today we're recapping The Student and Mr. Henri from 2015. And trust me, this isn't just another comedy. It's a story full of life lessons, persistence, and a finale that completely changes everything you thought you knew. So, without further ado, let's jump right in. The movie opens with Constance sitting behind the wheel of a car while her boyfriend waits in the back seat. She's a charming young woman about to take her driving test for the 5th time. Needless to say, she's incredibly nervous. When the examiner tells her to turn right, she confidently turns left instead, earning herself yet another failed attempt. Later, her father can't hide his frustration over her repeated failures. As he serves customers at his vegetable shop, they argue about her future. Constance tells him she's moving to Paris, determined to start a new life. Her father replies that she's free to do whatever she wants, but she shouldn't expect any financial support from him. Unshaken, Constance insists she'll find a job in the French capital and make it on her own. The story then follows her as she searches for an affordable place to live in Paris. She arrives at a house offering a surprisingly cheap room and rings the bell. An elderly man opens the door just a crack. When Constance introduces herself, he claims he doesn't know anyone by that name and immediately shuts the door in her face. Not giving up, Constance rings the bell again and explains that she came because of a room for rent advertisement posted by his son. After resisting for a while, the grumpy old man, Mr. Henri, finally lets her inside. Turns out he lives alone, and his son posted the ad hoping someone would keep him company. The problem is, Henri enjoys his solitude far more than other people's company. As he reluctantly shows her the room, he tries everything he can to scare her away. He points out a supposedly broken bathroom faucet and lists one inconvenience after another. But none of it bothers Constance. Compared to every other place she's visited, the rent is unbelievably cheap. Henri then shows her the bathroom he personally uses, claiming the water heater has been broken for 5 years. Curious, Constance turns on the faucet, only to discover the water is perfectly hot. Another lie clearly meant to drive her away. He then hands her a questionnaire, explaining it's the final step in the selection process. The questions cover things like pets and romantic partner. Apparently, Henri's pet turtle can't stand other animals, and Henri himself can't stand couples living under his roof. After filling out the form, Constance gets ready to leave. As she steps outside, Henri sighs in disappointment after noticing several more people waiting to see the room. Constance continues searching for other apartments, but it's obvious Henri's room is by far the best option she can afford. The next scene takes us to her boyfriend's apartment. He tells her it's time to leave because his daughters will be home soon. Jokingly, Constance says she's worried about getting along with his children. Right then, her phone rings. It's Mr. Henri calling to tell her she was chosen over all the other applicants. Overjoyed, she shares the news with her boyfriend. Although he's happy for her, his response is surprisingly detached. He admits he always knew their relationship would end this way. After all, he's married, and to him, their romance was nothing more than a summer fling. Later, Constance's mother and younger brother come to the train station to say goodbye. Her mother sends some money and a box of chocolates for Mr. Henri. Constance hugs her tightly and promises she'll find work and take good care of herself in Paris. After arriving at her new home, Mr. Henri greets her with a 20-page rulebook. Naturally, Constance jokes by asking if he used to be in the military. Without missing a beat, he replies that he was actually an accountant. That evening, Constance overhears Henri talking to his son on the phone and gets scolded for eavesdropping. Henri complains bitterly about his son and daughter-in-law, calling them two complete idiots. He especially dislikes his daughter-in-law, Valerie, and even jokes that his future grandchildren might inherit her supposedly low IQ. The following day, Constance is watching TV when she notices an old piano in the living room. Curious, she quietly unlocks it to take a closer look. Even though Henri specifically warned her to stay away from it, she can't resist playing a few notes. The moment she hears the front door open, she hurriedly closes the piano and steps away. Henri walks in and immediately announces that maybe she isn't the right tenant after all. Constance apologizes and promises never to touch the piano again. Henri then reminds her about the rent. Ready to pay the first month's rent, she's shocked when he demands 3 months' rent upfront as a security deposit. Desperate, Constance tells him she'd do almost anything. That's exactly what Henri was waiting to hear. He offers her a rather unbelievable deal. If she seduces his son, he'll waive the 3 months' rent. At first, she's horrified and refuses. Henri insists it's simply a test of his son's loyalty. After thinking it over, Constance reluctantly agrees, but not before negotiating an even better deal: 6 months of free rent instead of 3. Later that night, she spots a now hiring sign outside a local pub. She walks inside and orders a shot of vodka before asking the bartender if they're looking for waitresses. The bartender says they are, warning her that the pay isn't great and the work is exhausting. None of that discourages Constance. She happily says she's interested. He tells her to come back the next day when the manager is around and, feeling generous, offers her another shot on the house. The following morning, Constance is awakened by the sound of the doorbell. She answers the door to find Paul standing outside. Embarrassed to still be wearing her pajamas, she apologizes and invites him in for coffee. As she heads toward the kitchen, Paul asks how she recognized him. She explains that Mr. Henri had already told her about him. The two laugh when Paul jokingly assumes his father probably didn't have many nice things to say. Paul hands Constance some medication for Henri and explains that the cheap rent was actually his idea. His goal was simply to have someone nearby who could help look after his father's health. Just then, Henri comes home and immediately starts making sarcastic remarks about his son. Before leaving, Paul invites his father to lunch the following Sunday. Once Paul is gone, Henri asks Constance whether she finds his son attractive. Clearly pleased, he realizes she's already making progress with his little assignment. Over the next several days, Constance works late shifts at the pub while spending her nights studying as hard as she can. She also tries to build a friendship with Henri. Although it's obvious she's never been a great student, she refuses to give up, even if it sometimes leaves her feeling discouraged. Sunday finally arrives, and Paul returns for lunch with his wife, Valerie. Constance helps Henri prepare the meal and, remembering their agreement, starts subtly flirting with Paul while setting the table. She quickly notices how shy and awkward he becomes under the attention of a young, attractive woman. When she asks about the old piano, Paul explains that it belonged to his mother. Ever since she passed away unexpectedly, Henri has been unable to bear the sound of it. A heated argument suddenly breaks out at the dinner table. In the middle of it, Henri unexpectedly asks Constance to play something on the piano. Everyone moves into the living room, where Constance sits down and plays beautifully, completely captivating everyone, except Henri, who quietly leaves the room. Valerie assumes he simply didn't like the performance, but Paul explains the truth. Constance played so beautifully that it brought back memories of his late wife. That's why Henri couldn't stay and listen. The next scene shows Constance feeling completely discouraged after failing yet another exam. She tries to drown her frustration in alcohol, but instead of helping, it only makes everything feel worse. The next day, Valerie shows up to pick up some items Constance had brought earlier, only to find her in a disastrous state. Things get even worse when Constance accidentally vomits on the items she's trying to hand over. Yeah, not her finest moment. Later, in a tense moment in the living room with Henri and Valerie, Constance finally opens up. She says she doesn't want to return to working at her father's shop, but at the same time, she feels completely lost in her studies. Henri surprises her by giving surprisingly simple advice. Follow what she truly loves. That's when Constance admits something important. She used to love playing piano, but gave it up after a discouraging teacher at school crushed her confidence. Encouraged by Valerie and Henri, she finally sits at the piano and sings a song of her own for the first time. And for once, she's genuinely good. Henri even compliments her, clearly recognizing her talent. Afterwards, Constance talks privately with Valerie and asks about Henri's late wife. Valerie reveals that Paul's mother died 30 years ago after falling from a window, and Henri has been living alone ever since, unable to move on because he loved her deeply. Despite her harsh attitude toward Henri, Valerie admits something important. Even though she can't stand him, she knows he truly loved his son's mother. Deeply affected by the story, Constance makes a decision. She tells Henri she no longer wants to go through with her plan of seducing Paul. She can't bring herself to destroy a marriage that might actually be happy. In response, Henri tells her she should leave the house the next day. When she visits her parents, she's surprised to find her old room already being turned into an office. To avoid conflict, she lies and says she'll only stay for one day before returning to Paris that night. With limited options, Constance agrees to continue living with Henri, while now working there more seriously, partly to understand Paul better. A few days later, Henri mentions the London Call Music competition and encourages her to apply. But Constance hesitates. She doesn't believe she's good enough and feels like her life is already heading toward disappointment no matter what she does. Still, things continue. She follows Paul and uses the information Henri gave her to successfully seduce him. Paul, unaware of the manipulation, begins to genuinely fall for her. One night alone, Constance tells him she wants to start a real relationship. Paul is shocked. He points out their age difference and gently refuses. At home, Constance is devastated. Henri tries to comfort her, reminding her that all she needs to do is break the marriage, not necessarily build a life with Paul. We then see Constance at a nightclub with Matteo. He talks about wanting to go on tour with her, but she is distracted the entire time, staring at the DJ. Matteo quickly realizes he's losing her and leaves disappointed. Later that night, Constance shares a brief happy moment at home, again with the DJ in mind. The next morning, Paul sends her a message saying he now wants to start a relationship. He visits her at work, trying to look younger by changing his style, and later takes her to the same club. But there, Constance is crushed to see the DJ with another woman. On the drive back, she breaks down emotionally and tells Paul to stay away from her. Paul tries to comfort her and ends up kissing her, leaving her briefly conflicted but calm. When Paul returns home, he starts imagining that he now has a real relationship with her. Meanwhile, Valerie becomes suspicious. She finds a jacket hidden in his car from the previous night and becomes convinced he is cheating. Over the next 2 days, Paul tries to contact Constance, but she avoids him completely. Then Henri reveals something major. He submitted an application to the London Call Music competition in her name. Later, Paul goes to see Constance at her workplace, but she tells him to forget everything between them, saying she has met someone her own age. That completely breaks him. He loses both women at once, and on top of that, his lawyer informs him that Valerie is filing for divorce. Just when things couldn't get worse, Paul meets Valerie, who surprises him with news that she is pregnant. Despite everything, this changes everything between them, and they decide to stay together and raise the child. When Paul tells Henri the news, Henri reacts coldly, which disappoints him. Paul asks him to at least pretend to be happy when Valerie arrives later. Meanwhile, Paul shares the news with Constance, who seems to be finally getting her life back on track. But then she receives a call from her father. She has failed her university exams again, and he wants her to come back home. Frustrated and overwhelmed, she turns to alcohol once more. Henri, noticing her distress, tells her that parents shouldn't interfere in their children's dreams. He also reveals that alcohol caused the death of his wife, who fell from a window while drunk. Constance begins packing her bags, preparing to leave Paris. That same day, Valerie and Paul arrive at Henri's house to share the pregnancy news. This time, Henri is genuinely happy and joins in the celebration. But when it's time for Constance to leave, something changes. Her father comes to take her home, but she suddenly decides she wants to stay in Paris. She chooses her passion for music over returning to help at the family shop. In the following months, we see Constance preparing for the London Call Music entrance exam, now supported by Henri. The two grow close, sharing a quiet and meaningful life under the same roof. Eventually, Constance travels to London for the exam, giving it everything she has, but in the following weeks, she returns to Paris after learning that Henri has passed away. At home, she meets Paul again, who tells her that Henri was happy in his final days. Even though she didn't pass the final stage of the exam, after succeeding in earlier rounds, Paul makes a decision. He gives her the house, allowing her to stay in Paris. He also hands her a letter Henri left behind. In it, Henri says he was glad to see that Constance's hostility toward Valerie had disappeared after she became a mother. He encourages her never to give up on her dreams. Inspired by his words, Constance decides to try again, returning once more to the music school entrance exam, more determined than ever.